Good evening, everybody. I'm KHOU 11 Chief Meteorologist David Paul, based out of Houston, Texas. This is your tropical update. It's Monday evening. It's September 6th. Larry and Invest 91L, the two games in town that we're watching. However, 91L now looks very unlikely to be able to intensify. There's some wind shear that it's encountering. We're going to go over that here in just a minute. And Larry, although a powerful hurricane, Cat 3, beautiful looking hurricane on satellite and radar, well, satellite, but it's going to be a fish storm. This one looks likely to miss the island nation of Bermuda, miss the East Coast, put some swells on the East Coast, and that's about it out of Larry. And here's the other headline, and I think this may be the biggest headline of them all this evening. So the Madden-Julian Oscillation may end up limiting new storm development in the Atlantic Basin for the next week or two. We'll go over that. Big picture, you've got Larry, our fish storm in the open Atlantic. And then you've got this thing in the Gulf of Mexico that just has not been able to get its act together over the weekend and into this early week, Monday holiday here on Labor Day. 0% chance of developing over the next 2 days. Maybe when it gets into this zone here in the Gulf of Mexico, it could develop. It's a low chance, 30% chance within the next 5 days, says the Hurricane Center. You can see what's happening in the last couple of frames there. Can you see it? You can also see it here on enhanced infrared satellite. See it? It's wind shear. So the storm's being ripped apart by the upper level winds even as it tries to get going. These are the winds at 250 millibars. It's just limiting its ability to get going. We need the storms to hold together over a developing area of low pressure to get pressures to drop and to see intensification. And as we've talked about before, a healthy developing tropical storm or hurricane is one that is stacked vertically, straight up and down. When you get that wind shear blowing across it, it can weaken a developed hurricane and it can completely prevent a storm from developing at all. When you've got wind shear, it just can't get that circulation going. It disturbs it, disrupts it just way too much. Here's the outlook on 91L. This is the Euro. It takes a slug of moisture, an elongated area of weak low pressure up toward the central Gulf Coast. Now, there is a surface front pushing into the central Gulf Coast as well. Now, that much moisture interacting with a surface boundary like that can be the recipe for heavy rain. So there is a flash flood threat anywhere from New Orleans to Mobile Bay to Apalachicola, Pensacola, the Big Bend of Florida as we head into the middle part of this week. But I don't see anything significant as far as tropical development, a tropical low. That even looks like it stays an open wave. We go into Thursday, heavy rain threat as that tropical moisture interacts with that surface boundary over Florida, in particular Jacksonville, perhaps southern Georgia, depending on exactly where that surface boundary sets up. That's Thursday, and then we go into Friday and it zips off into the Atlantic. High pressure at the surface is building in, and that frontal boundary helping to act as a blocker to keep that storm off to the east of us. It's really actually what goes on in the upper levels that really steers this thing. And you can see we've got this significant trough, and there's the path that it's going to be taking following the upper level winds. But those upper level winds just too strong, too much of a sheared environment for this to really get cranking into a tropical storm or a hurricane. So this one looks likely to maybe become a depression, maybe not even become a depression. That's the same trough that is lifting Larry off to the north and northeast and keeping it steered away from the east coast of the United States. Speaking of Larry, beautiful looking hurricane. Don't see much in the way of feeder bands. It's become very compressed. It's almost what we call or describe it as an annular hurricane. It's just perfectly round. The eye is very wide. It's about 66 miles in diameter at its widest point. So think about that. So Houston, Harris County would fit inside the eye of Hurricane Larry right now. You could fit, Long Island is about, if you really go from tip to tip, about 115, 120 miles, so 66 miles. You could fit about half of Long Island inside the eye of that storm. And by the way, so a 66-mile wide eye moving at 10 miles an hour, if you were in the right spot, you could experience that clear, calm center for 6 hours as the storm moved over you, and then you would not want to be in the eye wall once it reappeared. Max winds at 125, moving northwest at 10, pressures down at 956. Spaghetti plots have this dialed in. And you can see the Hurricane Center forecast follows that very tightly. They leave it at Cat 3. It misses Bermuda just to the east on the weak side of a Cat 3. Bermuda would be okay on that scenario. We don't need it to hit Bermuda. It looks unlikely to do so. And then it races off past Nova Scotia into the cooler North Atlantic as we get into the coming weekend. That type of a track, Cat 3 hurricane, will give you larger beach swells up and down the east coast. A little bit of beach erosion is possible, but that is fine. We'll take that over a landfalling Cat 3 hurricane. And of all the stuff we've looked at, this may be the most interesting and telling about what's going on now and what's going to happen over the next week or two as we move into the heart of hurricane season, the statistical peak right around the corner, September 11th. So we go into Thursday, that's the 9th of September. There's Bermuda. Both the Euro and the GFS have a tightly wound Cat 3 Larry missing just to the east. Then they catch that trough, accelerate up past Nova Scotia into the North Atlantic. This is going into Saturday. And the first thing that I notice is I'm always looking for where's the next storm. And we don't see it anywhere. Now remember, we're right in the peak of the season here. We're at September 10th, September 11th. Now, the Euro does try to form a new area of low pressure just off the west coast of Africa this coming Saturday, and then moves it north and weakens it. It gets caught up in a trough as it moves north. So going into Monday, a week from today, nothing else brewing in the tropics. We go out even further in time, that thing vanishes as it moves toward West Africa, Northwest Africa, and up toward the Mediterranean. So going into Thursday, so we're 9-10 days out from today, and the two biggest models that we lean on have nothing new forming in the Atlantic Basin. At the peak, the statistical peak of hurricane season, when we sometimes have had 2, 3, 4 named storms at a time brewing out here. So what's going on? It may have something to do, it may have a lot to do with the Madden-Julian Oscillation. Now, the Madden-Julian Oscillation, this is both a beautifully elegant and complex meteorological phenomenon that I could spend 2 hours explaining. But what I've done is I've boiled it down to its essence. And with the Madden-Julian Oscillation, what you have is a global wave. Now remember, a wave, has a peak and a trough, but this one quite often will extend across the entire circumference of the planet. And quite often the Madden-Julian Oscillation will begin as a wet phase, as a wave producing enhanced rain and thunderstorms here over Indonesia, Asia, the maritime continent. This type of scenario can bring very heavy monsoon rains to India, very active hurricane season out in the Pacific. Of course, there are typhoons out here, so it would be an active typhoon season. But just as much as the active phase can produce heavy rain, it also has a trough, and that is its quiet phase. And so in this scenario, you get heavy rain or enhanced rain across Indonesia, and you get a much more quiet weather pattern, less rain, less intense storms over the United States and the Atlantic Basin. But the wave moves. So quite often it originates over Indonesia, creates enhanced monsoon and flooding rains, and then it begins to move. And sometimes that active phase can go all the way around and move into the Atlantic Basin. When the active phase, the lifting phase, the Madden-Julian Oscillation is over the Atlantic Basin during hurricane season, it can statistically quite significantly enhance the number of storms that we get and the intensity of storms. So what we do is we divide the globe up into 8 quadrants to track this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so here's the East Coast. This is the Atlantic Basin. There's West Africa. Here's Europe, Russia, Indonesia, Kamchatka Peninsula, the Pacific Ocean, the Aleutians, West Coast of the United States. When the Madden-Julian Oscillation moves into what we have labeled as Zone 8 and 1, that's the Atlantic Basin. That's where you have an enhanced chance of tropical storm development in summer, but also if it's in winter, this Madden-Julian Oscillation is still there. This can create heavy snowstorms, stronger nor'easters up the East Coast. So it has a very broad range of impacts. So where is it right now? Where is the Madden-Julian Oscillation in its lifting or active phase? Well, it's right here. It's in zone 3, and it's very weak. The closer this arrowhead gets to the center, the weaker or less influential the Madden-Julian Oscillation is. The further away it gets from the center and the further out toward the edge, that's an indication that it's getting into a very strong, very statistically significant strength. And that is what it's forecast to do over the next 14 days. Move from a weak Madden-Julian Oscillation active phase in zone 3 to a strong zone 4. That's right over the maritime continent and Indonesia. So this might enhance their monsoon, or any rain or thunderstorm activity here would be enhanced while the lifting phase is here, and then the sinking phase is here. And that's happening just as we're moving into the peak of the Atlantic hurricane season. The lifting phase is here over the next 2 weeks, Indonesia. The quiet phase, the sinking air phase, is here over the Atlantic basin. This can significantly reduce the number and intensity of tropical systems in the Atlantic basin, the Atlantic Ocean, the Caribbean Sea, and the Gulf of Mexico. So that may be what the models are picking up on, that we're in the less quiet, less stormy, the quiet phase of the Madden-Julian Oscillation. I'd love your questions, comments, feedback. Post them in the comments below. Hit me up on social. We'll see you tomorrow for another update.